Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Well, it's Monday, last week of the month / first week of next month. So we are going to get a lot of interesting economic data this week. I think it might be a little quiet though. Let's just go through everything and see what we got. So here's the charts. On Friday, a little bit range bound, I would say, in the Treasuries. Although we did still get a good move over there, didn't we? We still got a good move, like, for scalping. But we can see here in the overnight session, we're kind of recovering this. So I'm starting to get this feeling that, like, markets don't think that it could go further, which I think suggests that the market still thinks that there will be another rate cut. Okay. S&P 500 is looking really good overnight. Maybe we gonna get into a Goldilocks zone with equities. I don't know, but that overnight is looking really good. Actually, that's too good. Like, that is too consistent of a trend, you know? Oil, well, OPEC talking about output increases. So it really seems to me, conspiracy theory or whatever, I really don't think it's a conspiracy theory, but it seems to me that the oil producers like Donald Trump and will not allow oil to get above $65, $70 a barrel. Once it gets there, then they start talking about increasing output and it backs off. Gold and silver. Well, it looks like gold, another march upwards. Gold and silver are really getting wacky. So silver closed at an all-time closing high. The all-time high is 50. And they're just a little sneeze away from that. So like, the crazy thing about gold and silver, though, is that I really have not seen the wider retail participation on that, which is kind of crazy. Like, we've had signs of central banks and so forth buying gold for quite some time now. So I'm really surprised that there is not a larger contingent of retail traders out there cheering this on. Certainly there are people in it, but it has not turned into a mania yet, which means that this could have a lot more room to go. And that's just absolutely insane to me because it's up so much. Copper recovering a little bit, but I forget what this was. This was about a supply disruption, this move up. But you scroll out. Yeah. I tell you what, that whole move. What? That's probably one of the craziest things we've ever seen in financial markets. And because it happened in copper, nobody talks about it. I just find that a little amusing. Okay, so in the Japanese yen, they got hit pretty bad. What was it? Thursday, Friday? But they are recovering a little bit there, and the dollar is coming back to 97.5. So this is where you're going to start to see this thing. You know, everybody's been on social media complaining about how much the dollar is down, guys. The dollar being down is usually a good thing. Yeah, I'm not going to say that the correlation is always the same, but the most common correlation that you're going to see is the dollar goes down and everything else goes up. And it's good for your stocks. So, if we're going to, the market has kind of been thinking like, maybe I'm going to top, Like maybe that was it, and now the recession starts, or whatever the deal is, right? And if that's the case, I think that what you would probably see is a lot of short covering in the dollar, while everything else goes down from the correlations. So we got to keep an eye on that. Dollar is turning into a pretty essential part of the whole global correlation matrices. I mean, it's always been a big part, but like recently, since 2020, it's kind of like been a little bit iffy. Well, whereas in the free money era, it was like all that mattered. That's why I have the dollar, and I'm always like shocked that like retail traders are out there trading without looking at the currency. Okay, let's come over here to Forex Factory and change our view to a weekly view so that we can see what we got going on this week. So we do have pending home sales, a couple of Fed speakers. It looks like the Fed speakers are already passed, though. But Trump will be signing some executive orders after I'm gone here. I think this is wrong. 6:32. Oh, maybe it's right. I don't know. My other calendar over here says that Trump signs executive orders is at 8:15. So I don't know what that's about. This one also has Dallas Manufacturing Index, which is one important to look at. Okay, but then we get further into the week. Okay, we got Chicago PMI on Tuesday. That's usually a big one. And then we're going to start getting all of the jobs numbers. JOLTS, ISM, unemployment, non-farms. That's so crazy because it really feels to me like that crazy non-farms was just like a week or two ago. I guess it was a week or two ago because a month is only 4 weeks. But still. So we got a bunch of stuff. Also on Friday, we got some PMIs. So, yeah. Well, I would expect for a Monday the market to be relatively quiet. We have had a little bit of movement though. So I don't think we should take our eyes off of it. By the way, good morning, Kevin, and Steffa, Uzi, Ray, Octavius, Apol. Everybody's here. We had a good week last week. We really had a really good week last week. Not just like I did good, because we had like 2-3 trades, really because of Uzi. 2 or 3 trades that I think were pretty good. But like just good movement and things to talk about. At the same time, it's kind of been not so good. Because crazy stuff in the news continues to happen. And I'm so emotionally exhausted, man. Is trading your main job or no, it's just a hobby. Yeah, I understand. Especially trading futures is extremely difficult. You're extremely unlikely to have like really significant long-lasting success day trading futures. So like the idea that you're gonna make it your whole living is kind of a little fantastical, not very realistic. It's a different story when you get into stocks. You get into the right kind of niches. There's some places where it's a little bit easier to have consistent profits in stocks, but day trading stocks, that is. But futures, no, it's just a hobby. We don't do it to make a living from it. Let me put it down. Had you seen that HSBC started using quantum computing for algo? Yes, I did. And it was in a bond market context. So there's lots of things where it's like, if this is the value of the 10-year treasury, and I am trading corporate bonds, what should my corporate bond be priced? And there's all sorts of things that you have to take into account, including things like the yield curve. What does the yield curve look like and where am I on that yield curve? And there's a lot of different methods to look at the yield curve and kind of say, okay, where does this bond lie on the yield curve and what should the yield be based on that, right? Things that all require lots of little calculations. And generally what we do in the bond space is they'll make like a table. They'll like pre-calculate these things and recalculate them like once an hour or something like that. And then that way it's like a constant lookup to see what the price should be, relatively speaking. So there's a little bit of inefficiency there, right? They are, in order to do a faster calculation, doing a less accurate calculation. And I think, although that wasn't really clear to me from what they were, the news story that I read, but I think that that's where they're putting the quantum computing to use. As with the quantum computing, they can compute those very complex computations almost instantly, and it gives them a slight advantage. So, the thing with quantum computing, it's very, very different, and it is very, very new. So, I think there's this idea that like once quantum computing becomes mainstream, that instantly it's like it's all over, sort of a thing. Not quite, because we're really not entirely sure how to use it. There's a couple of it's still very abstract. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's like, well, presumably we should be able to break heavy encryption algorithms. Like Bitcoin, for instance, would be the end of Bitcoin. They would have to change the protocol at least. But it's not like my understanding is it's not like somebody has actually written that algorithm and just hasn't happened to run it against it. It's still all theoretical. But that's the thing, is that at some point, now that the quantum computing is to the place that it is, it's inevitable that they're going to start creating tensors that utilize quantum calculations to make dramatically more powerful machine learning models. So it could be interesting stuff, but we'll see. Yeah, and it probably will make a revolution in trading, but I don't know if it will be super impactful to what we do. Like for the arbitrage players, I think that's the place that's going to be most affected is arbitrage, right? But we'll see. So I'm kind of afraid. So yesterday there was a shooting at a Mormon LDS church, and there was a ton of media attention on it at the beginning in the morning, and as the day went on and people became less and less sure what the shooter was doing, it kind of quieted down. But I am super let me tell you something about this. Okay, not that I want to like focus the whole stream on or anything, but something that you might not realize if you're not familiar with the Mormon community and like the impact that this is going to have on people in the Mormon church in Utah in particular. The Book of Mormon is basically about genocide. Like there's like the important story there, which is that Mormons believe that Jesus Christ came to America and then eventually the church that was organized in America disappeared, right? But the overarching theme in the Book of Mormon that happens over and over again is genocide. Like the story of the Book of Mormon is basically, if you are not both righteous and vigilant, there is evil out there and they will genocide you. So there are a lot of things happening out there that very much mirror things that the Book of Mormon says. So community is going to be extremely impacted by this event. I tell you, it was a little freaky sitting there in church and reading about this while you're at church and thinking like, could somebody come in at any moment and do that sort of a thing? Scary. Very, very scary. And the guy, I don't think that this was just like, so here's another issue that I'm seeing here with these shootings. And this was something that really started with the Las Vegas shooting. I really feel like that the Las Vegas shooting was kind of a turning point, which is that I can no longer come in and just look at any one person that does one of these shootings and say, well, they were just crazy. They had schizophrenia, whatever the deal was, right? Like, obviously these people have problems, but I wouldn't say that they're straight up crazy. It's been that way forever, though. People are just thinking about it more these days. Maybe. I think that the frequency of these kinds of events is a little bit higher than usual, but it's not necessarily unusual to go through like they cluster, right? You have one and then you'll have a bunch of other ones, right? So there's that. But so I don't think that the frequency of it is necessarily unusual, but it's like there's something about the circumstances of the individual instances that is very different. Like it's no longer just, oh, this a person would have to be absolutely crazy and deranged to do this, and more like there's problems out there actively causing these. Now this guy kind of fits in a weird category because he had a family. He was not just a loner. He had a family and apparently a son that was severely handicapped. Because I do think, like I was saying the other day, like for people to do these sorts of things, for them to commit terrorism, because I would say that this one was a terrorist act. No. So the way that I would put it is that the shootings that are happening now are much more like terrorist acts, right? Like the Columbine shooting, that was just two deranged kids that thought it would be fun, right? But what we're seeing now is what I would consider domestic terrorism, right? And in this particular case, domestic terrorism against a church, which is a little wild, right? So what are the conditions necessary for that kind of domestic terrorism to happen, right? Well, one, there has to be some sort of thing out there that they're unhappy about, and two, they have to believe that their act of terrorism will somehow push society in the direction that they want it to go, and three, they have to believe that their life is sufficiently worthless to be worth going and doing something like that, right? So perhaps this guy on the last one, because he had a family and everything, usually that would stop somebody from doing that. But maybe, his son was handicapped and all these sorts of things. Maybe he just don't want to deal with it anymore. Could be the case there. I tell you what, dude. I can't confirm any of these stories, but the stories that people are posting on Facebook, like, I know somebody from that ward, like you can't necessarily go and talk to the news immediately after something like this. I think that they tell you not to, because it could play into things in court, and anything that you do and say could potentially be used to like discredit your witness testimony and things like that. So it's better to like not say anything publicly, but people talk and gossip, right? And the stories that I'm reading are absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. You can't control the narrative well enough if you talk to the news. Well, so they were saying that the guy was walking around to people in the chapel and asking them if they believed in Joseph Smith or in Jesus, and if they didn't answer him quickly enough, he shot them. That's the first thing that I've heard, and I've seen that multiple times from multiple people. I heard that he shot a 5-year-old in the back. I also heard that, I also heard that, like, many children died from the fire. Like, it's crazy. And the other thing you have to realize with this, and this is confirmed, is that it was the police that put him down. It was not, I think some people thought at first that like a member of the congregation or something. Like, no, you're not allowed to have a gun at church. They ask you not to. I wonder if that'll change. So here's the other thing you might not know if you're not Mormon in the Mormon community. Well, kind of one thing and then kind of a follow-up off that. The LDS president, who we consider to be a prophet, died on Saturday night. So, new prophet. He might have decided to go and do it that day because he thought that there'd be more people there. So you're getting a new president, and it's you'd think that because it's a church and everything that they don't enact sweeping changes, but usually when a new president comes in, you see differences. And it's General Conference next week, which is a conference where they televise to all the Mormons next week. Yeah, so yes, when the new president becomes the new prophet, exactly. We'll have General Conference next week, so they'll be able to talk to everybody about it next week. So that's going to be interesting. And I wonder if one of the things that they will say is we will allow people to conceal carry, maybe. But we'll see. What do you mean by that? Kind of diminishes the value of a prophet in principle by having new ones? I'm not sure I follow. So another thing going back, so terrorism from your own community, though, I do not believe, or at least I have not seen anything to suggest that this individual like came from the Mormon community and was like a disaffected Mormon that decided to go and attack his own church. That would seem like a likely scenario, right? But it doesn't look like that was the case. It looks like that this was some guy that was just super anti-Mormon. I mean, this is why, Uzi, I mean, I know you kind of, you see it, right, in me, that, like, I'm always like, well, Mountain West conservatives are different from, like, Southern Baptist conservatives, and I'm always a little bit nervous when I'm seeing things like that. It's because, like, I am concerned about things that are happening in this country. I kind of agree with these things that, like, you got to be careful about who you allow into your country, because it could change the country into a living nightmare. Like the chances of the United States becoming Nigeria or South America are not zero. Okay. I am concerned about those sorts of things. But I also know that the people that really, really strongly believe that stuff and are obsessed with that stuff, the like what you would like so-called Christian nationalists, I know that they would probably get rid of me without a second thought, right? like the hate against Mormons is like a real thing. And man, and reading on the Donald, some of the responses to this and everything were really quite disgusting. All this, but Mormons consider themselves Christians. Yeah, I come from a position of neutrality. I'm not particularly religious, but I'm also not a rabbity. No, yeah, I know, I get you. But you get what I mean. It's just like I have experienced the discrimination. Okay, like it's a very real and serious thing. This is kind of why I'm like I really feel like that depending on where you're at, that there's more discrimination against Mormons than there is any ethnic group in the United States, depending on where you are. I've only experienced the guys coming to my front door. So, yeah. But man, if any of those stories about the event are true, holy, like, the news is gonna get more wild. And there is a little bit, I tell you what, there is definitely the whose side, you know, which side of the political aisle did this guy come from? And it was kind of funny because I think that both sides had things about the event, like the information came out that kind of made them doubt, or kind of made them think that it was on their side, or that it came from their side. And so like both sides kind of shut up about it. But the big one that kind of, you know, that made people think that maybe it was a conservative was that he had the truck that he drove in had flags on it, had American flags on it. So it really does kind of sound to me, and based on this story that people are sharing, that is not confirmed, but is coming through the rumor mill, and I think is probably true. That it was like some sort of Christian radical. But I've also seen a bunch of things suggesting that he was anti-Trump. So I don't know. Oh, sorry, I missed this comment. I was always under the impression that a prophet was kind of a big deal, not some appointment by committee or whatever when someone dies. Well, so think about back during biblical times, right? There's you know, there is like the priesthood, right? And there is one guy that is like the lead priesthood holder, right? Sometimes that guy was saying stuff that was prophetic and was recorded in the scriptures, and sometimes they weren't, right? But there was always the guy that was the lead of the church, and that's kind of the way that I would describe it. I want to adjust my chair. Prophet implies someone capable well, I wouldn't necessarily say saying the future, but communicating with God, yes. This thing has been really dead, by the way. Really dead. And the person capable of communicating with God is chosen. No, it's primarily off of seniority. So Mormons believe that the structure of the church that Jesus set up, that's the structure, and that there's should be 12 apostles. So that's what happens is you got 12 apostles, and then there's also a first presidency. There's the prophet and his two counselors, and then the new prophet tends to be the apostle with the most seniority that's been doing it for the longest. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like, it would be more. What would be the word? Like if you were trying to convince people that they really were a prophet, it would maybe be easier to convince them if the prophet could just come from anywhere and there was some sort of magical sign that they were the prophet, right? Kind of like the way that things work with the Buddha, right? There's certain miracles that allow you to know that that's the next. No. But from an organizational standpoint, at least for that kind of an organization, it's worked really well, honestly. Yes, I always seems like structure and bureaucracy is important to you. I wouldn't use those words, but I think you're stumbling on something there. Yeah, like, yeah, even after you die, like Mormons believe that when you get married and you're married in the temple, that you are sealed together, and that by being sealed in the temple, that in some way guarantees some sort of relationship in heaven. And so you will have your parents, and you'll have your spouse and your children, and it's viewed as this structure. And essentially, we believe that there is some level of social structure in heaven. Yes. And that still even includes like positions of authority. So it's kind of weird. Now, I don't think that Mormons, so this is a thing that I think is interesting, in that I think maybe colored my perception of hierarchies and maybe put me at a disadvantage at first, because I think that Mormons view hierarchies very differently than other people do. Like, I think a lot of people think of hierarchies as, yes, that's power that I can, hold over people and get them to do what I want. And yeah, Mormons don't think of that as power. They think of it as responsibility, right? Like the idea of leadership in the Mormon church is you're servant to everybody, right? So who's the greatest of among you is the least of you, sort of an idea. So that would still exist in heaven is kind of an interesting thing, isn't it? Honestly, I think about that often. remember when one of the people there said to me, God's perfect government in heaven. And I said, oh man, we still need a government after we die. Yes, we still need a government after we die. So think of it from now think of it from Seth's perspective. This isn't Mormon stuff. This is just speculator Seth stuff, right? We have systems, and the interactions between individual agents within that system can result in certain high-level emergent behavior that you wouldn't expect from the individual interactions. And so there's this whole thing about how do you structure the interactions to get the high-level behaviors that you want. And when you look at things like an economy, well, in an economy, if there is a shortage of a certain good, then there's no reason for you to share that information to anybody. You just want to, because you want to hoard as much of it as you can, right? So in a communist society, there was always shortages, and all the insiders would just buy everything before anybody else knew what was going on, because there was no incentive for them to tell anybody else. And that's why we need a market, because a market is a way that incentivizes that information being shared with the other side, because you can make money from it. You can trade, and you will make money from that information that you have, and in doing so, it will price that information into the market so that other people will know. And it's not perfect at doing that, but it's much better than the alternative, and that kind of removes like the number one bottleneck to getting to a higher level of prosperity, right? Okay. Well, so from Seth's perspective, all of those sorts of things will still exist in heaven. I think that there's structure, that heaven is not an anarchy. But it'll be a little bit different because everybody within that, man, we took a few ticks down there. I should keep an eye on it here. Anyways, you know, people will think about it differently because people won't be in positions of authority because they want the power, but it's opportunities to serve other people. And what are the, you know, what are the principles and the structure of those relationships and the system that results from that? But I feel that every system, like I believe that we're here to prepare for the next life. That everything that we're learning here prepares us for the next life. That it's and that includes the society as a whole. Like that our society as a whole, it's developing, like the way that our government and our structures are today are more sophisticated than they were 3,000 years ago. And they're better. For the most part, they're better, right? Like we're slowly evolving, and we as people are slowly becoming better, right? And that is we're working towards. That's what we're working towards, is some sort of a civilization in heaven. Everyone loves the power up suppliers. I don't think I would enjoy being bishop, though. I don't. Power without money is just a bunch of responsibility and a burden. It is kind of weird that people did completely drop the topic on Twitter despite all this stuff. Yeah. Because, well, so first of all, on the Donald, so there was a picture of the truck, crashed into the building, and somebody had a picture of somebody else's phone, which I don't know why they did that, but it showed a truck in the front. And it was just like the whole picture did not fit the description of what had happened. Like, that was not a truck that had crashed into a building burning, a burning building, right? So there was a bunch of discussion that picture of the truck can't be real. But then all of the other news outlets, they were finally allowed to get close enough to the building because they subdued the fire. And then all of the outlets actually had pictures of the truck, and then it was confirmed. And once it was confirmed, yeah, activity on the Donald went just completely stopped talking about it. And then on Reddit, you started seeing all the people that were especially on advice animals, all the people saying the crazy stuff oh, this was Christians attacking Mormons, which it does look like that's what happened. But then there was this thing that was so they found out who the killer was. They go to his address on Google Street View and everything, and it looked like that there was a Trump Vance sign on the yard, but it was next to a stop sign. So there was some question about whether he was pro-Trump or wasn't. And when they thought that he was a right-winger, Reddit was talking about it. And then people started pushing back on that. And I think there was some other social media stuff that people suggested that he was very anti-Trump. And then it was everything about it on Reddit was wiped and people stopped talking about it. Now, maybe part of it is also that there weren't any other news updates. And I'm kind of, with the other event, it was well, the thing today is now you're going to get the shooter's name. And then well, with this instance, I kind of feel like that all of the official information, the only next one that you get on official information is they will update the death toll based on what they find in the building. And I'm very, very, very concerned that there's a bunch of children, because people were saying that children hid in closets and died. Gonna be very upset if that's the case. Oh, it wasn't. No. What happened in Utah? Well, the Charlie Kirk thing. But we're talking about something that happened in Michigan. It was a Mormon church was attacked in Michigan. But because it's a Mormon church, of course, people in Utah are talking about it. I probably dwelt on it too much. We should talk because Brad has something important. Well, not, let's say, interesting to talk about. I guess it's important to talk about. I finally got a Kubernetes cluster with my Rancher running with Rancher. Wait, what is Rancher? Is it a full cluster with multiple machines? So I have Kubernetes running, but it's just one. It's just one machine, and I'm using K3. What is game plan for development? So I have been, right now, I have been doing a lot of testing of different things to determine how practical making a trading GUI in Rust actually is. And I've found that many of the different frameworks that are available. Yes, I have about 10 PI. Oh, I see. It's like those. It's like a pi cluster. Gotcha. So I started out trying to use Iced, and I went through and started doing that, and I found that they were kind of missing some of like the key essential components that are necessary for that, and they've been changing their API. So I kind of feel like that Iced is probably going to become the go-to GUI framework for Rust, but not until version 1 of Iced has been released. Because these guys from System 76 have been building a new Linux GUI directly with Iced in Rust, and people are saying that it looks pretty good. So you got some serious people using it, but you know, like it's not quite there. It was like especially if you want like it to be native, you know, like native look and feel. No, you can get that. But then the other issue that you get is I want to draw my own charts, right? Your rancher is a cube cluster. Oh, okay. Yeah. It is doing the drawing code, right? Because with some of these, there's not a rendering surface. They don't have a rendering surface in their framework, so you can't do your own graphics card rendering stuff. Like if you want to, I think Iced kind of has it, but especially, so the other one is, oh man, I can't even remember the name of it now. Slint. The other one, Slint is probably the most developed, and it's multi-platform. Like you can do it outside of Rust too, but and that one has its own kind of declarative language to describe the GUIs. So that's probably like the most developed ecosystem that I've seen. And that one, no rendering surface. So that one wasn't going to work. So now I am trying eGUI. And eGUI is supposed to be, or is trying to be, the easiest to develop a GUI, but not necessarily the most powerful. And it seems to have a pretty big ecosystem around it. But that also leads to some complexity. So like if you want to do your own, have your own rendering surface, it can be done, but there's a bunch of complexity involved in it. And I know I'm going into like a ton of detail, but Brad will appreciate this. Okay. So on Saturday, I did have time to look at it and had some progress. And basically, there's a template out there that has eGUI for the graphic for the controls, WinInt for the controlling the windows, and WGPU for render surface. So that all kind of works. And it uses Polster. So you kind of have to like, you know, you start your main thread and then you have to create a non-blocking process for the GUI, but that still stays on that thread because you can't access the window if you're on a separate thread. So I wanted to use Tokio, that's Tokio, is kind of like the most common multi-threading kind of orchestration framework. And I was trying to use Tokio to spawn the process. And that did not work. And it just went in circles. Did not work. Yeah, Tokio drift. And eventually what I found is that I can just use Polster to make the GUI thread. And then everything else can communicate to it with an MPC channels. MPC. MNP? I don't know. Anyways. So that's what I've got. Actually, I think I have it open still. Yep, I do. So, this is the main file. We're spawning these loops to do the Python bit. Oh, this one, it just spawns a thing, but I haven't written anything. But this would basically be the market data stuff. And then this is a little simple script that goes and loads all the Python, loads a bunch of Python scripts to show that the Python bit works. And then you do pulsar block on run, and then that runs over here. Oh, it's this one right here. And then here's the actual GUI itself, which is pretty long. 263 lines. It's not huge, but where do you want to get your market data from? Well, I want to use DX feed and Rhythmic. This is Vim. No, this is Helix Editor. Well, the reason I want DX feed is because they've got the NASDAQ total view data for a good price. Because at the heart of it, I want to have a platform that's an order flow platform that's built with stocks from the beginning. Yeah. I was talking to them to get like developer access, but they didn't get back to me. And I kind of said, well, let's just wait until I get to the part where I need to actually pull the data through. So now that I've got this basic example working, where I'm able to, because the first part is to get my existing code to work within their framework and get a GUI to pop up. Now I get a GUI that pops up, but it just has a button. So now the next step would be to get a thing that I've been trying to have it show my logging and have a file menu, and have a grid, and then within that grid, draw my own chart. And it seems like I should be able to do this with eGUI. So that's kind of the next part. And I think that would probably be 2 major sessions of programming, if not more. And then I would be maybe ready to start trying to do the market data stuff. The market data is like way big project, probably. Yeah, scared of somebody. Well, I don't think that you're really going to pull enough from what you're looking at right here to really do anything. But I should probably close it so that we can still see. Because the treasuries have been doing a little bit of a sell-off, although there's not consistent move in cumulative deltas, so I'm a little skeptical of it. But what I got right now is mostly proof of concept, and kind of the more sophisticated code is out there. Well, that's kind of the thing, is like, okay, what kind of a moat do you have for this business? Well, there's a lot of other trading platforms out there, right? But I think that I can do it better. I think that I understand the tech, that I can create a real state-of-the-art system that others would not be able to do, because they're just not going to have the cojones to do it with the right tech. They're going to take the easy route and use C#, right? So I really don't think that somebody could just look at what I've got on here and then go turn around and beat me to it. But part of that is because what I'm doing is kind of crazy anyways, right? I've kind of realized, because I would really like to just have like $10 million to sink into development of this. But the reality is this is something that you could only bootstrap. Like, there's so much investment involved in the beginning of it. Nobody would fund that. So it really does have to be one really entrepreneuring good programmer or group of programmers doing it in their spare time at the beginning. And using, we do have our NinjaTrader indicators, which I don't promote nearly enough. They really are quite valuable. I think are better than any of the similar tools in any ecosystem, but definitely within the NinjaTrader ecosystem. And, we should probably be finding ways to sell that more frequently. And from what I see from other places, I think there is a point where, you'd get enough business from that you could you could then turn around and fund the development with that. Like if we got that up to the point where I could make a living from that, and then I could spend all my time programming on the new GUI. And of course, making content. Although right now, honestly, if I was making YouTube videos, I'm not 100% sure what I would do. I guess I do have some videos I want to make. And I have ideas all the time that I kind of like forget about. Or things that I'm kind of like, I really think these are important. Yep. FINRA voted and approved to do the way the pattern date. Yep, they did. There's still some other things that need to happen, but it seems extremely likely that the pattern day trade rule is going to be changed to $2,000. Do you think that when the pattern day trade rule changes, that people will be less interested in prop firms? Because I really think that most people, their conception of this is I get a bunch of money and I day trade stocks. And then most people realize they don't have enough money to practically do that. And that's then when they go over to futures and they say, oh, well, I can do these prop firms. And that's why they get into it, right? So if you can just put in $2,000 in day trade, you still have to worry about wash trading tax. But it's much more practical at that point. And I'm concerned that it's just going to absolutely gut the retail futures trading industry. I think commissions will be free and brokers will sell your order flow. Yeah. Although they did make some changes to the whole selling order flow thing, right? Like, they didn't make it completely illegal, but they did change what you can do with it. They will stay big and constant. They will change advertisements and some simple things and adjust. Yeah, well, they could adjust. It would. I think for them to be competitive with that, though, they would have to change their setup significantly, right? Because the way that they're set up right now, it really is like it's kind of a crapshoot. Like, they force you to trade in a way that you're just not likely to have success. I'm getting some clicky here. Oh, it's not. It's a good observation, Uzi. I always forget. Because my thinking has been, when I am done with getting my proof of concept for the base technologies that I want to use on my GUI. Because honestly, the market data portion of it might be beyond my skills. Like that's going to be a long, like, I can't just sit and write it out right now. It would be a long process of like learning and studying and stuff. So, at that point, I think that it would make more sense, before I go too much further on that one, to come back and do some of the machine learning stuff that we wanted to do over here. It looks like it did. It would have given us a short towards right at the beginning of the session, in fact. That's interesting. But shouldn't it be giving us a buy in here? And, you know, who knows? By that point, I think that should put us into, like, the new year. And then maybe I'll have a better idea of what I want to do at that point. You know. I should be trying to get more into content, because I've often wondered, because there was one time where our live stream was, like, not visible on the front page, even if you were searching for me. And that only lasted for like a week. But then ever after that, I would see little things from time to time. Like when YouTube's added merch, like you could have merch down in the video description and stuff. And I wasn't able to use that. It was like, there's some restriction, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't until it was made available to everybody that I could use it. So it always kind of made me wonder, there must be some restriction on my account. And could that potentially even be influencing how much the video gets pushed out? I don't know. But then, like last week, YouTube like unbanned a bunch of accounts, including InfoWars, wasn't it? Except for that, then they immediately got taken back down. So, if I thought, and I don't think that that's why the channel never completely took off, but maybe it could be. If that was the case, though, then shouldn't I be like making more content now? But at the moment, I just do not feel a very strong desire to make a lot of content. We are doing some stuff. They want me to do another. They want me to do another KVM switch, so we'll do that. Somebody wants to do an interview with me, so I need to look into that today and respond back to them. I saw them. They messaged me like Thursday, and then I totally forgot about it, and they got back to me again on Monday, which happens a lot. By the way, where it takes them 2 messages to get to me, but. Then there's the people that will send me an email like every day trying to sell me service. And it's just like, well, I'm not going to do that, but you can still send me emails. I love it. But part of that no desire to record is, I think, the job situation. So we'll see. It's my manager, he left for another job. I honestly, it got me into like learning about management and things like that, because I was like, well, if anybody here, I'm probably the best person to do it. But what I do is too important. Can't put you into something else. I'm in that situation, which is kind of like, So if you're gonna put me in that situation, you really better pay me, right? But he starts today, and then I think that they've been waiting for him to start before they try and resolve my situation, whether they want to hire me on full time or not. And that takes a lot of emotional energy out of you, man. It really is like it really kind of irks me, because like in my mind, I'm not like really focusing on it too much, or like sitting and ruminating about it. Like if I was really feeling strong anxiety and ruminating about it, then I would understand. But for whatever reason, it does just suck all of the creative energy out of you in that situation. So, and I'm looking really hard for other places too, in case that doesn't work out. So that's why hopefully we get that resolved, and then maybe I will feel more inclined to make videos. I don't know. Or maybe it doesn't work out and I'm unemployed again, and then I'll really feel inclined to make videos. But if that does happen again, which I tell you what, man, it was kind of interesting. Like I got laid off in like September, and then I wasn't able to find a job again until like April, right? So it was basically I was unemployed for the whole winter, right? Like in my mind, it's cold and it's wintry. And that would kind of suck if I end up unemployed again and it's during the winter again. Because during that time I had a ski pass. This time I haven't bought a ski pass. I've been waiting to see if they hire me on full time, and then maybe I'll spend $1,500 on the ski pass and $1,000 on a snowboard and go all in on that. But no. Yeah. So, but hoping. And then another thing that we might do to warn you guys is that between November and December, because I've never traded well during that time, even though it's good in the stock market, the bonds, I've never been able to find like an explicit edge there. And so I may go back to using all of that time to program, and then coming back to regular streaming in January. That might happen too. But if we get to that during that time, I will spend some time doing, I want to program my own, even though I know there's stuff out there that can do it. I want to program my own random forest algorithm. Make sure I understand that really well. Maybe even program my own neural network algorithm. And then, I don't know, see where I go from there. I have never really gotten too deep into some of the frameworks and stuff available because it wasn't available in my NinjaTrader version. So, but maybe it's time to start looking at that. I guess I could look at if NinjaTrader brokerage had an option for Rhythmic, then maybe I would switch back. Does look like the treasuries are seeing some buying and they're trying to pull them back up out of the hole. But overall, it's still not a whole lot of movement. It's much more interesting in the S&P 500 right now. The open has been a sell. New York Federal Reserve's Ramage says markets are adapting well to liquidity changes and maintain standing repo facility to handle liquidity shifts. Bloomberg, the full impact of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies has yet to be seen, and that question may weigh down on prospects for the U.S. stock market, depending on how it plays out, according to PIMCO CEO Emmanuel Roman. So something I was wondering this morning, because I saw a TikTok from a guy. He said he went and he visited China last month. I think he was originally from China, but he visited China last month. And during that time, he got to talk to a lot of people and store owners and things like that. And like one store owner said, back in 2019, this street was like shoulder to shoulder. There were so many people. And now you're the only person on this street. Wow. So China is in a full-blown recession from that guy's reports. And we know that the Chinese economy has definitely been hurting from these tariffs, and probably a lot more than the United States. And I kind of wonder, given that we had a 3.8% GDP number last quarter, because keep in mind, during the Obama years, we had a hard time getting above 3%. And 3% is just like the longer run rate that we need to have just to be even. And to catch up with our debt, it needs to be more than 3%. So 3.8, if we were to get an annual GDP number, because that's like the quarter times 4, right? If the whole quarter ended up being above 3%, that would really be something, considering that the tariffs are put in place. And that would suggest, don't you think, that maybe there is some domestic growth happening because of the tariffs enabling it. And is it the case that kind of what's really been going on since 2020 is that so much of our growth was really actually dependent on China, and now it's not? And we haven't been seeing, that's part of why the economy seems to suck so much, is because China's in a recession. But now we're kind of decoupling. Kind of an interesting question, isn't it? Because I also do not believe that we have really seen the final answer on tariffs. I think that what we've seen has been like people made these doom and gloom predictions. Most of those doom and gloom predictions were wrong, but those were not the predictions of the really savvy economists that really know what they're talking about. And that what we've seen so far, I think, seems to be in line with like a 0.5% decline in GDP. Maybe. But the most negative impacts may be yet to come. Like, if it does hurt, if it does create inflation, and the Federal Reserve isn't able to do any more rate decreases other than the next one, that's certainly going to hurt. Even, you might still see the market be okay and the stock market rally continue on. Like, it might not be a recession, but it's probably still going to suck for tech workers, for instance, right? And I wonder how much of what we're seeing is not like, we want it to be, okay, we had tariffs and now we see what happens in the economy. But like, what you're seeing in the economy is not just tariffs. What you're seeing in the economy is also like a massive, massive CapEx spend on compute for artificial intelligence. And probably a lot of efficiency improvements across the board because of artificial intelligence too. I think with the way that the AI is right now, I don't think that you could necessarily decrease headcount. I think that there was a lot of surplus headcount that tech companies could slim down, right? And that happened. But I don't think that AI is actually making it so that you need less people. But it is making it so that you get more out of those people. And would it get to the point where you need less people? Maybe. So this is another thing. So here's a thought I had over the weekend. Is do you eventually get to the point where something kind of like a UBI does exist, but instead of it being through the government, it's through the corporations? In other words, big tech companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc., maintaining a massive amount of workforce that they don't actually need, simply so that they have customers. You get what I mean? Because especially like Google and Microsoft, I don't know. I mean, Apple does some of this stuff too, but I don't feel like they do as much of this stuff. You know? Why not have people like Google that it's like, well, we don't really need you for any of our operations that actually make us money, but we'll pay you to work on this open source library that we think is important. Or yeah, half the country worked for Brondo. You know, like, and you would still have like it would still be a job, but a lot of them would be really easy jobs that maybe afford people a lot of free time and are really there so that the economy stays afloat. UBI through corporations, by corporations having tons of employees that they don't need, finding a place for them anyways. Isn't that interesting? Because I just kind of see it like, I really don't think that UBI through the government is ever going to happen. And I don't think that it would be a good thing anyways. I saw this video the other day and this guy was saying like, why is it that socialism doesn't go away? Well, I think that it's kind of something ingrained into people. Like the base of humanity is socialism. Like the family unit works on socialism. And so socialism is instinctual to you, even though it doesn't scale to a whole economy, right? But he thinks that it's because we live in a meritocracy and the meritocracy doesn't have any way of handling the people that tried but failed. They went through, they worked really hard, they did everything that they were supposed to, but they just weren't as good as the other people. And so they really don't reap the rewards of it, essentially. And it's becoming increasingly so that we're just like discarding those people. And if there's not some incentive to do something with the people that tried but failed, that's kind of a problem, and that's why people turn to socialism. That was a really interesting thought. I thought that was a really interesting thought because I think that it kind of hits on some of the things that I feel. That like the market's not efficient, and so there are a lot of people out there that are hurting, even though they didn't do anything wrong. Right. And there's lots of people that are out there working really hard and they still can't afford to have a house or a family or anything like that. And we're going to have to do something about that. And how do you do that? The government's probably not going to do anything. So at what point do corporations, does it get so bad? It gets so bad that the corporations realize that they have to step in and they have to say, well, we're going to hire a bunch of people, even though we don't actually have to. We will actually end up making more money by hiring all of these people simply because then there will be people out there to buy our products. Kind of like the Henry Ford idea, right? He wanted to pay his workers more so that they would buy his car. Another thing that was reason why I was thinking about this. And I'll probably leave you with this. I think I'm going to leave a little bit early today. There's a video or an article. I linked it in the political analysis thread. Site. I thought this was a fascinating article. You guys should read this article, okay? It's from the Yale Review, and it is titled "Trump is Only a Symptom: The Crisis That America Can't Change at the Ballot Box." And it's not what you think, because this is probably like the trillionth person that has said the problem is not Donald Trump. That's just a sign of the problem. But what they actually get into, and this is kind of microstructure stuff, is that they're pointing out the ways in which the global economy is changing and shifting, and that those shifts are not favorable to democracy. Essentially, they argue that Donald Trump and his methods are merely the natural consequence of a system that is moving away. That his methods, like this whole thing, like rare earth minerals are becoming more and more important. And how do you get the rare earth minerals? You have to make like exclusive deals with people. And a lot of the mining that's going on apparently is like rogue mining. Like they're not supposed to be mining, and it's kind of like on the black market sort of stuff. There's a lot of that going on. And Donald Trump's methods of doing things work in that system. And he learned those things basically from the mob in New York. And you know, that's why he's going that way is because that's kind of where the economy is going. And ergo, future political leaders will be more and more prone to behave like Donald Trump is behaving, because the issue is not that Donald Trump is crazy and some unhinged lunatic, but that the actual world systems are moving in a direction that is not favorable for liberal democracy. And in the article, they talk about how, in many respects, the nationality is no longer the most significant force in people's lives. That oftentimes Google and Microsoft are more significant forces in their lives than corporations are. And will corporations have to evolve and shift, especially if they get to a point where they need less and less people to continue their operations? What kind of obligations do they have to people? And could that system shift to one? And that's where I got the idea that was like, oh, so could that shift to one where corporations just maintain a ton of headcount that they don't actually need in order to keep the economy propped up? And that you'll have more and more people that are doing these jobs at big tech companies that, you know, they hardly work at all. Because that's what Google was doing when we had the free money, is they didn't want these people out there competing against them. So they were hiring them even though they didn't 100% know what to do with them. And then just kind of letting them do whatever they wanted. Future could be a very interesting place, folks. All sorts of crazy stuff happening that I find very emotionally exhausting. But I still feel optimistic about the future. Things are going to change, and I think that there will probably be periods of great change and turmoil, but that in the end we will work it out and that the world will be better. So. One step away from Find model. I'll pay you these special coins that are only good at my store so that you don't get ripped off by those others. Yeah. I something that I think I should straight up call this a prediction. Okay. I think that there will be other currencies. You think about Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is really there to be transferred into fiat. I think that there will be other currencies will pop up that will be significant in the marketplace. Like, you know, special type of coin that you can buy with dollars, but not vice versa. And you can also get as payment for something, but that you can only use in a certain place. Like you can only use for compute. Alternative like parallel financial systems. Because that's what happens in video games, is like to deal with the scaling laws and stuff like that. If you play Stardew Valley, they kind of added like a whole add-on into that's like an add-on called Ginger Island. And on Ginger Island, the economy is completely different. You have to go and collect coconuts, and that's how their economy would work. And they had to do that because by that point, players have so much cash that they would just be able to buy everything on Ginger Island and there'd be no progression. So they had to provide an alternative progression system. And so my prediction is that within our lifetime, so like let's say the next 100 years, that there will be parallel financial systems that will emerge.
Order submitted.
Where they need to have a financial system, but that financial system is too imbalanced if you allow people to just do it in dollars, and so there will be some sort of, it'll kind of be separate. I think that's something that will happen one way or another. All right, anyways, I'm yapping. Back to 16. Interesting that we reversed on that. Is there going to be some... I don't know. This looks to me like a large meta order buy and not necessarily people getting stopped out. I don't think that there was enough people going short here that you can get stop outs, but it'd be interesting to see how high they get and where we're at tomorrow. When remember, we got a lot of economic news coming later in the week. So I'm going to get going, guys. It's going to be a brand new day for me. So I will see you tomorrow. Stay